We're coming at you unedited. We'll see how it goes. Keep going.
Keep it going. We're
Yeah.
gonna leave it in. Welcome to Legalese. I am the layman, Matthew Patton, and I am with the expert, my brother Mike Patton. And this is brought to you by the law offices of Patton and Patton. Mike, how you doing?
Doing well. I actually don't think we're supposed to describe ourselves as experts under the ethical code. So I am a lawyer and I know about the law. But
um,
I think in particular, you're not supposed to say you're an expert at any particular aspect
okay,
in
well,
your
let's start this
advertising.
over. I'll edit out this first bit. Um, well,
It could be a funny, we're coming at you unedited. We'll see how it goes. Keep going.
keep it going. We're
Yeah.
gonna leave it in. That's great. Mike is a attorney who has some knowledge about the law.
We're going to be humble.
We're gonna be
I
humble
don't know
here.
if we're experts. Uh,
um, so yeah, but Mike, how are you doing?
I'm doing well. You know,
Yeah,
it's
good.
Friday afternoon, and we've had a successful week, and that always feels good. So,
Yeah, great. Okay, well, the topic we're going to cover today is property damage claims. So last time we discussed what do you do after an accident, and probably the first claim that happens after an accident, insurance claim, is the property damage claim.
yeah.
So you've told us what you would do if you were in an accident, um, and how would you sort of start the process and get the process moving on the property damage side?
Yeah, so the property damage side is essentially much more user-friendly for individuals because the value of the vehicle is kind of the value of the vehicle. We'll talk about how it's not that simple most of the time, but truly, uh, for most claims, you don't need an attorney to handle a property damage vehicle. The largest reason for that is uh, most attorneys like myself operate on a contingency fee. And if we're taking one third of the value of the vehicle, that leaves the individual in quite a hole. And so it doesn't make a lot of sense, just the economics of the situation. It doesn't make sense to hire an attorney. However, there are a couple things to note. So the once you file a claim with your insurance company, which usually starts with a phone call, each insurance company has different intake processes. Um, Sometimes it's online, sometimes it's on the phone. Just depends on the insurance company you have. Once that claim is started, they'll assign an adjuster who will begin the valuation process of the vehicle. Again, depends on the insurance company. Sometimes they'll want pictures submitted, sometimes they'll send somebody out. Some of the newer companies are perfectly content for you to just send pictures and then they'll run an estimate based on that. They will assess whether your vehicle is should be repaired or if it's totaled. And the law behind that is uh, you get, and it, in the other party that's responsible for damaging your vehicle needs to pay the replacement cost or the repair value of repair, whichever is less. So that's what people are referring to when they say, is it totaled or is it not? Meaning, will it cost more to fix it than to replace it? And so the insurance company will make that call uh, based on comparable vehicles and the price to fix it. Now you don't have to go with their opinion. If it's on the edge and you think you can find a place to repair it, you are free to do that, and then you'll just have to argue with the insurance company a little bit about that. But most of the time, people are pretty happy if the car's totaled because they get the replacement value of the vehicle they were driving. The exception is uh, because of the fast depreciation of vehicles, oftentimes the loan amount is more than the replacement cost of the vehicle at the time. And that is often tough news for individuals. However, um, if you do repair the vehicle, there's also something called diminution in value that can come into play. A vehicle's value is diminished uh, when it's in an accident, and so we say a fancy legal word like diminution of value, but all we're saying is the value's less. Uh, so, so that's the first thing is, are we going to replace the vehicle or are we going to repair the vehicle? It seems most of the claims that we see, and Matt, you as a paralegal that works around these cases, you maybe would agree with me. Most vehicles are replaced these days more than repaired, unless it's just a fender bender.
Mhm.
And maybe that's just the nature of the cases that come to us.
Mhm.
Um, but if the vehicle's repaired, you agree on a shop, they repair it, the insurance company pays that, and then you should say, what about diminution in value? That would be that tip on that side. And the insurance company is, is some version of, oh, shucks, we didn't know you knew about that. And then they'll negotiate it. The law isn't that well settled in some states. In Kansas, there's a great case on point saying, yeah, diminution in value is a thing.
Mhm.
So that's that side of it. On the replacement value side, there's a little more uh, maybe shenanigans, you would say, with the insurance company. They will find comparable vehicles and they'll average those and assign a value to pay you for the replacement of your vehicle. So that is where the rub is. You want to look at those comparable vehicles. You want to ask for them because sometimes they won't give them to you. Ask for uh, those comparables and see if they're really comparable because sometimes they're not that close. We've seen some when we've have had to get involved where it's not the same category of vehicle, but it just sounds similar. And so you can push back and say that's not a comparable vehicle. And now with the internet, God, I sound old, right? There's this new thing called the internet, kids. Good golly, it can help you out. But you could go on a site like Car Guru and look up 30 vehicles that are identical uh, across the country to your vehicle. And that's the tool you use to push back on the comparable vehicles that they found. And not every insurance company will be wrong in their first, but it's something you should check. And then you send those to the adjuster and say, no, you should be paying me 2,000 more than that. And that is something that's what I would do if I were in that situation. That's what we've done for clients when they're stuck, and that's what I tell all of my clients who are in have a personal injury case is it doesn't make sense for you to hire me for the property damage at this point, but if you get stuck, let me know.
Yeah.
And so that's what we do. So that is probably everything I would say you need to know about those claims. But if you ever have that situation and have a question, feel free to reach out to us. We're happy to talk through it.
Yeah. On some of the ones I've seen, I think you mentioned 30 comparables, and I mean that's a lot. That might be
I would
tough, particularly
That
depending
would be a lot.
on the model. But I will say, the insurance company will find any reason they can to dismiss the comparables that you present. So having as many as you can get, as many as you can find, um, gives you a better chance for some of those sort of being obviously better um, comparables to use than what the insurance company grabbed. And one of the things they consider a lot is where the vehicle is, because different parts of the country um, have different levels of inflation for vehicles. And so they're paying a lot of attention to those vehicles that are being sold uh, near in the claimant. Um, the other thing that I've noticed in these claims that's really odd is the insurance company will also devalue their claim based on what they're considering to be a markup um, from the seller. Um, I forget, yeah, like the dealership markup, and then they'll reduce the value of their claim based on that. I've never gotten them to really budge off that before.
Yeah, and my view is that's just pure insurance company stinginess. I mean, I do not believe they would win that in court. There's no legal justification to that. It's just kind of a inward policy where they think, well, we can argue that.
Hmm.
And it's usually a small enough amount of money that it's not worth litigating over. Uh,
Hmm.
but at some point, uh, that's what class actions are for. So maybe
Wow, that's a what a way to end that conversation.
we're coming for you. It's it. I truly don't think that's a. I haven't researched this recently, but I've never come across a law that would allow them to reduce for that.
Hmm.
The law says replacement cost. So
Hmm.
what is that
Right.
cost? Well, the dealership profit is part of the cost of buying a vehicle. I mean,
Yeah.
it just is. So there's no preference for a private sale versus a dealership sale
Mhm.
under the law.
Yeah. That's a great point. Um, and then the other thing to look for again is different cars have different um, features that are added onto the vehicle, particularly if you've had a lot of customizable things that you've done to the vehicle over the life of the vehicle, making sure those are noted uh, in the claim process is a big deal.
Right.
Um, yeah, but we've never seen insurance companies move a lot on these, you know.
They don't like to. Yeah, they
So,
don't like to spend time on it. And yeah, the movement is usually not a great deal.
mhm.
That's fair to say.
Yeah.
And the reason for that is it's often not litigated because you're talking about a difference of $1,000 to $2,000, and if you file a lawsuit, you're going to
Mhm.
spend that to get that. So it doesn't make a lot of sense.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Well, hopefully that helps you all with navigating some property damage claims in the future. Um, we do also have a PDF that we put together, so you can reach out to the firm if you're interested, and we can get that to you. That can help you navigate some of those claims. But let's kind of move on to the second portion. Um, we can say non-expert portion.
Yeah. We can say we're not an expert at this.
So, what's been catching your interest this week, Mike?
Well, I think what's catching everybody's interest right now is just the intense division in our country politically. And that's showing up in kind of wild ways or ways that seem new, but maybe are, the same version of stuff we've seen around. Like there was a CNN story I read this week about swatting. Like there are uh, people for someone who might not know what swatting is, it's where you call the police on somebody saying that there's a violent threat, and but there's not. You're just
Mhm.
doing that to, uh, frankly, put the life at risk of the individual you are doing that to. So very evil thing, but that has been going on with the target being conservatives, and there's uh, they set a Tesla dealership on fire. Somebody did.
Jeez.
And so there's these instances of uh, political violence,
Mhm.
and that are arising out of the political division that's in our country right now. And so I would say, if anything's on my mind, that would be on my mind right now. Uh, and what I tend to think about when I think about that is, again, Arthur Brooks, who wrote a book called Love Your Enemies. And in that book, he talks particularly about the political division that occurred when he wrote it, which was almost 10 years ago. Uh, but he talked about the Tea Party and the left, and at that time, you would really point to the right as being, this hyper polarized uh, group as opposed to the left. But I think we're seeing it on both sides. And his answer is you have to look at the forces in play that want you to be this angry because there are legitimate differences in how the left and the right view the world. And there are legitimate differences in how the left and right want to solve these problems. And they do affect people's lives. I would never say that these differences aren't important. I am just generally more conservative. Um, but I also think that the division is caused by certain things that are becoming as big of a problem as the policy differences. And what I mean
Right.
by that is when you have political rhetoric that's pushing people towards political violence, then that's a breakdown of the American political system, which is based on uh, freedom of speech. It's based on discourse. It's based on democratic institutions working to resolve our differences as opposed to violence. So, so that problem is more important, in my view, at the moment. And and so Arthur Brooks's first conclusion is you got to look at who's making you angry, and there's a couple different sources. Whenever there's a political candidate that's running that's making you angry, they're doing that to get you out to vote, and that is a highly effective tool. Uh, they want you to be angry about the other side. And the antidote to that, according to Arthur Brooks, is to think about somebody on the other side that you love, because there are those people. Uh, None of us are, maybe not none of us, but most of us are not in such a political bubble that we can't think of someone who is on the opposite side of the political spectrum that we care about. And and if you can find that person, uh, then you can say, you know what they're saying about the people on the left isn't true because I know that person. And so I don't have to hate them just because I disagree with them. And that becomes important. And for me, I don't know what grandma would think of under this political uh, environment, truly.
Uh-huh.
Uh, I don't know, but she was a hardcore Democrat, right?
Yeah.
Our grandma. Uh, Pictures of Kennedy's on our wall next to family. You just thought, oh, it's Robert Kennedy, not my uncle. That's Robert Kennedy, and and she just loved that. And it's like she wasn't a bad person just because she had a different political viewpoint than me. She's
Mhm.
my grandma.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
that helps inoculate me from hating the other side.
Yeah.
Uh, and the other thing, I've been talking a lot, so feel free to interrupt with your thoughts on any of this.
Yeah. Well, I was just thinking about I've been thinking about the word judgment, um, and it's kind of a confusing word actually when you think about it, because it has like lots of different layers of meaning. And in the Bible, the word judgment appears several times, and in the Sermon on the Mount, Jesus says, "Don't judge." And there's a verse in 1 Corinthians 5 where Paul says, actually instructs the Corinthians to judge those in the church. So you have two verses in the Bible saying one says don't judge and one says to judge. which is very confusing. But I think you have that because the word judge has layers of meaning. So it can be a meaning of like condemnation toward others. Um, have an attitude of condemnation towards someone, but judgment also has a meaning of being able to tell what's good and healthy and what's not good and healthy. Um, and I think we just have a hard time sorting through those two different ideas. Like we can have a conception of how things ought to be and how people ought to act, um, and simultaneously not have a contemptuous attitude of people who don't do that. Um, I think those are two ways of using the word judge that get conflated. But I think understanding the difference on both of those, one of those is good, and obviously one of those is not good. And so being able to walk in that tension, I think, is pretty important.
You use the word contemptuous, and
Mhm.
contempt is something that is absolutely toxic to the person who is hating and the person who is receiving that contempt.
Mhm.
Um, so, what would you say is the anecdote to contempt for the other side that we will start to feel when we engage in social media or mainstream media?
Yeah. I mean, to go back to scripture, because that's the way I think. In the Sermon on the Mount, Jesus says, love your enemies. And then the very next phrase he uses is pray for those who persecute you. Um, and so there's that posture of prayer when you're seeking the good of the other in that posture of prayer, that can begin to transform the heart attitude. But I think what you said too about find someone who thinks that way, who you love. I think that's a great way of diffusing some of those feelings as well. Um, and I think there's a phrase in Mere Christianity where C.S. Lewis said, um, "Act as if you do love someone, and presently you'll come to find that you do," which is kind of difficult, easier said than done, but I do think there's some wisdom in that.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think that would be a fantastic note to end on. If you made it this far through our podcast, appreciate you, and lots of love towards you.
Lots of love toward you. Thanks for tuning in to Legalese, and we will see you next time.